Vision Eye Centers, it's always a busy time. We're just getting that debrief here real quick. And they do cataract surgeries, a lot of good cataract surgeries. And we want to welcome Dr. Duna Raoof to the program. And we're just talking about that. Cataract surgeries are not kind of a seasonal thing, right? There's someone's always in need. There's always these times where you guys are doing surgeries, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So cataract surgery is one of those procedures that, even though it's considered elective, it serves a major functional need for our patients. So every time is a busy time for us. When people feel like their vision is being impacted by the cataracts, then it is the right time to do the surgery. Usually they find that they're having difficulty driving at night. They feel like they always need extra lights to read. Some patients describe it like, my glasses feel like they're always dirty, there's a fog or a film over them. And they come in for a consultation, we confirm that there's cataracts, we do multiple tests, and then we recommend surgery. So really it can happen anytime. For most patients, we see that they start developing signs of cataracts in their 50s and 60s. The average age in the US that people get cataract surgery done is 67. With that being said, I've done cataract surgery rarely on people in their late 20s or 30s, and then also people in their 80s or 90s. So there's a wide range, but most commonly it's the 60s and 70s.
Now, are those usually health issues that precipitate that, like a diabetes or something like that, that just because of the damage it can do to blood vessels in the eye itself?
Exactly. So there are some risk factors that are not age-related that can cause cataracts. One of the most common ones is trauma. So traumatic cataracts can happen when somebody is punched in the eye or hit in the eye in a certain way that causes the lens to become opacified. Another reason is medications. So certain medications have side effects of rapidly developing cataracts. Other health issues like diabetes or other ocular surgeries can make the cataracts develop much faster.
Okay. And when we talk about that, also, do people need a little bit of help around the house immediately after a cataract surgery, like just to make sure you're okay, not going to stumble on something, things like that?
So with improved technology and cataract surgery, healing time is so much faster, and it truly is a quick in and out procedure. The procedure takes about 5 to 6 minutes. It's done under twilight anesthesia, so typically the patient is awake, they hear me talking to them, but they're in La La Land. So after the procedure, we ask that somebody has to drive them home, and then they're pretty much good and functional. I do ask them to take it easy, meaning no vigorous exercise, no bending over the waist, lifting heavy things. I don't want them to drive the first 24 hours because of the anesthesia, but otherwise they're really fully functional and they don't have to have somebody at home helping them.
So like you said, there's the new tech, there's the lasers, but let's talk a little bit about the difference there. You still do manual surgeries in terms of cataracts, and we have the lasers. Way back on the Wayback Machine, when I was a young man, you didn't have any of that. So why would someone still need a manual cataract surgery today?
Yeah, it's really rare nowadays that we do manual cataract surgery. So this was the old traditional way of doing cataract surgery. It's been around for a very long time, and about 15 years ago, the laser was developed. It's a femtosecond laser. It's basically a cutting type of laser, and it's very similar to the laser that we use in LASIK surgery. So sometimes people will confuse LASIK and cataract surgery and LASIK, but we're not really doing LASIK at the time of cataract surgery, but rather just using that laser for the cataract surgery.
For the actual incision that you're making, you're getting in there instead of taking the scalpel, oh my gosh, the scalpel to the eye. Cringe thinking about it.
So the laser is incredible in that it does multiple steps of the cataract surgery. The incision is certainly one of them. So the incision can either be made with the laser, or it's made with the scalpel or the blade, which was the older traditional way. The cataract, I like to describe it to patients, it's like an M&M, like the candy M&M. It's that size and that shape. And it sits in the front part of the eyeball in a bag. The bag has a very transparent lining, kind of like saran wrap. So the surgeon has to access that tiny M&M that's inside the saran wrap in a very delicate way to get the cataract out safely and put the new lens implant in its place. So the older traditional way of doing cataract surgery is that you create an opening, we call it the capsulotomy, into that bag, the saran wrap, with sharp instruments. Usually we use a needle that's bent or forceps that have a sharp ending, and we basically manually open up that circular opening to access that lens.
Okay.
With the femtosecond laser-assisted cataract surgery, it is an incredibly precise, reproducible, consistent, every time, perfect circle that the laser creates instantly that creates that opening.
Okay.
The other thing that the laser does is that it softens or breaks up that cataract into tiny pieces.
So it doesn't have to come out in one giant pull or chunk that could actually do some damage, right?
Exactly. So the older way, we used to chop up that tiny M&M with 2 sharp instruments into a bunch of small fragments and then evacuate those pieces out.
Okay.
As you can imagine, that causes more inflammation and trauma and swelling within the eye. With the laser-assisted cataract surgery, the laser is actually making those cuts. So it's slicing that piece of M&M into a bunch of pizza slices. And then the surgeon can go in and evacuate those pieces in a way that causes a lot less inflammation and swelling. All of those things will lead to faster recovery of the vision and theoretically a reduced rate of complications too.
Okay, and when the old ways, was there a chance of leaving like little bits sometimes in there as well? Or
That
is
can happen.
That can happen?
It's incredibly rare, but that can happen, yeah.
Okay, so when we're talking about the decision to either do manual, like you say, it's very rare, or laser, what are some of the factors that might cause you have to do a manual surgery?
There really aren't. One potential reason would be if somebody has severe glaucoma or problems with their eye pressure, that during the laser procedure, we elevate the pressure in the eye for a very short amount of time while this laser is suctioning on the eye. That can sometimes predispose the patient to a risk for having the pressure be so high for a few seconds. It's really rare, but I have sometimes recommended against laser for some of those folks. But really, otherwise, most patients are great candidates for the laser. One other thing that I have not mentioned yet that's an advantage of the laser is the ability to manage astigmatism. So astigmatism is a word that a lot of people hear about, but they don't know exactly what it means. It's basically a word that we use to describe how the surface of the eyeball is shaped. If the surface of the eye, which is the cornea, is shaped like a perfect basketball, you have 0 astigmatism. But if the surface of the eye is shaped a little bit like a football, which is the case with most people's eyes, that's called astigmatism. So prior to cataract surgery, I measure all the internal and external geometry of the eye. We measure the curvature, the diameter, and all of these measurements, including calculating the astigmatism. If we correct the astigmatism during the time of the cataract surgery, we can improve the clarity of the vision afterwards for the patient. And the laser has the ability to do that very precisely. So in addition to all the cuts that I already mentioned that the laser performs, it also can manage astigmatism by creating very precise partial thickness incisions in the cornea, which is the surface of the eye, that will basically give the patient much crisper vision.
Now, there's a video I want to play of a cataract surgery, and why don't you kind of walk us through what's going on here? So
here we can see that there's an intraocular lens that's artificial that's being placed in the eye. That's just kind of an overview of what we do in cataract surgery. There are many different platforms of lasers that are used these days. This is an example of one where basically the laser emits very precise cuts. It gives me, as the surgeon, an incredible 3D representation of the eyeball after it scans the eye with multiple cameras. This is the blade that's used to make the incision. The blade is very small, but like I said, the laser is incredibly precise. It's a computer-guided laser. So I actually program into the laser how big I want the incision to be, how thick, how deep, and where I want it oriented. So the level of consistency and reproducibility that you get with the laser is really unparalleled.
Right, there's no way to match what your hand can do compared compared to the laser precision,
Correct.
right?
This is the step where we create an opening into the cataract. So this is the manual way. We use a couple of sharp instruments to create that circular opening in that saran wrap capsule in order to access the cataract. Versus with the laser, it instantly creates that beautiful, perfectly circular cut every single time.
Okay.
Then I remove that little opening, and we use an instrument that's shaped kind of like a pen to actually remove the fragments of that cataract that has been chopped up by the laser. This is the older traditional way where we chop it up with the two sharp instruments. I break it into two halves initially and then into quadrants. And then this pen-shaped instrument is a phacoemulsification handpiece. It's basically emulsifying the cataract. Whereas with the laser, it perfectly cuts those four quadrants instantly. And then the surgeon, I just go in and evacuate those pieces out. So you just see it's cleaner, less inflammation, less swelling, less trauma to the inside of the eye.
And does it save time as well? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so that phacoemulsification handpiece, that pen-shaped instrument that's emulsifying the lens, it uses ultrasound energy to emulsify the lens.
Oh, wow.
And the more ultrasound energy you use, the more swelling you're going to get in the eye afterwards.
And this is the insertion of the lens then afterwards?
So the lens is made out of a gummy or flexible material.
Okay.
So the lens is folded kind of like a little burrito and inserted
like
through
like a soft contact lens almost, right?
So there's a very small incision. It's 2.4 millimeters wide, and I insert that intraocular lens that's wrapped up through that tiny incision. Once it's in the correct location inside that capsule in the eye, I inject the lens and it opens up beautifully. I make sure it's well centered. I seal the incision, usually just with injecting a little bit of fluid into it. So it is very rare that I use stitches during the procedure.
Okay.
I'll only use a stitch every once in a while if I'm not happy with how the incision is closing, but the incision is self-sealing, heals on its own. It's really...
And any lens can be used in that procedure, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So we can do femtosecond laser-assisted cataract surgery regardless of what kind of lens implant we use. So I typically tell my patients that there are two decision trees when it comes to their options for cataract surgery. One option, which really is not an option, is laser or knife. It's a no-brainer that the laser has advantages. And then the other option has to do with what kind of lens implants they want. And that is something that I do spend a lot of time on with my patients, and that can be a topic of discussion for another time. Just kind of hearing their lifestyle, their activities, their hobbies, whether they want to wear glasses, they don't want to wear glasses, so that we can customize the option for the lens implant. But we can do any kind of lens implant.
Sounds amazing. Dr. Duna Raoof from NVISION Eye Centers, thank you so much for coming in. That was a really incredible video and walking us through the difference there. And incredible stuff. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Publishing Club's up next. Stay with us.